interact. You can drop questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat that I can bring up for Dave at the end of the session. There's reaction controls and things on your screen as well too. But hopefully everybody is used to Zoom enough now that we've been using it so much. We do have a door prize. You have to be here at the end of the session in order to get it. And it's a fantastic book called The Phoenix Project, which Dave has picked out for us. Very interesting story, directly related to the content of this presentation today. So it all ties together nicely. And I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. There we go. And I think most on the call certainly know Lean Practitioners Association of Saskatchewan and what we're all about. But for those that are new, and just as a reminder to us all, we're here to connect Saskatchewan organizations from every sector in the use of continuous improvement to advance cultural and competitive excellence. That's a really nice focus for us. And I think we're all of like minds as we get together here tonight. So tonight we have Dave White, who's the principal consultant of Depth Consulting. I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing Dave tonight. I do have a formal intro that I'm supposed to read, but before I dive into that, I just want to mention that I've known Dave for a few years now, and his passion and leadership and continuous improvement and the use of Agile tools, which all come from Lean, in the IT space, inspires me. It truly inspires me. His passion and dedication is just outstanding. And on top of it, he's even a heck of a nice guy, so it works well. Now I've got to do here's the intro I'm supposed to deliver. So Dave White is an accredited Kanban consultant and trainer, and he is in the first cohort of the Kanban University Distinguished Fellows. Dave was the first Canadian accredited Kanban trainer in 2012, and one of the first accredited consultants in Canada and globally. So he's been in this game really from the beginning and really knows his stuff. Dave specializes in helping organizations mature their software development and information technology practices on both the process side using Kanban and on the technical side using technologies such as ASP.NET Core, Kubernetes, Azure, and a variety of other technologies. He's passionate about DevOps tooling, techniques, mindsets, and regularly talks and teaches on a wide range of Kanban, DevOps, and software development topics. His company, Depth Consulting, is a boutique consultancy that helps organizations with DevOps, cloud-native software development, and management consulting, with a particular emphasis on Kanban and Agile methods. And again, with his history in the field and being in it pretty much from ground zero, where I'm deeply honored that he could take the time tonight to pass along some of his knowledge to us. So on that, I will pass it over to Dave, and I will stop my sharing and let him share. There we go. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much, Jim. is the Zoom blush filter working? Because that was really glowing, and I just I'm glad that you were able to even just say some of those things. So thank you very much, Jim. All right, so you guys should now be able to see my presentation. So Jim approached me, or I think he introduced me to Stuart, and had presented like an introduction to the Kanban method. And this is going to be, a 100 level topic, just about, where it came from, because I think the motivation for the Kanban method is really important. And we'll get to a couple little details. And if you guys have any questions, we'll get to that at the very end. So, hold on, there we go. So this slide is going to have a lot of words in it. I'm not going to talk to all the words that are on the slides, but I always want to make sure that my slides have enough information that people can use them after the fact. I always hate when I go to slideshare.net and I'm like, oh, it looked like it was a really interesting topic, but it's a whole bunch of slides of pictures. So there will be a bunch of words, but I'll try to make it a little bit more entertaining than just reading the slides. So you guys also will get a copy of this presentation at the end of at some point. Jeff's going to email it out or make it available as a PDF. So this is me. And this is sort of a bit about the story or the agenda for this evening. I'm going to just tell you kind of where it came from, some of the motivations. We're going to talk about some of the core concepts, and then I'm going to show you, hopefully, that it's quite applicable across industries. One of the things that was important, it's always actually important, but Jim also emphasized that this isn't just about software development. It's about human beings who are doing creative things in their brains, and the manifestation of what they do in their brains ends up being something that's also very hard to see. It's not a building, it's not a road, it's not a car going down an assembly line. So I want to make sure that people don't think it's just software. Okay, so why and where did this all start, and why did it all start? So there's a gentleman generally acknowledged as the founder of the Kanban method. His name is David J. Anderson. I had never really talked to him about what he did before he was doing management consulting, but he was a developer at some point. But then he became a manager of developers, and managers have to take care of projects or work and their people. And so David was a manager. His story sort of starts in the late 90s when he was working at Sprint, and he's a manager of teams, and he is responsible for helping those teams deliver features or new products for Sprint. Now, interesting about David's journey, and probably a lot of people in this call who have any interactions with the Agile community, his journey started about the same time as a whole bunch of other Agile methodologies started to manifest. So, notable ones in there were Scrum with Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. DSDM Consortium had created DSDM. Crystal from Aslister Coburn. There was a bunch of other ones, but there was also this lean software development book that the Poppendieks wrote. And all these things sort of popped up at around the same time. And Dave tried to use them, and he didn't feel that they were helping him solve the problems that he needed to solve. He struggled with the lack of, emotional safety that the Agile methodologies sort of prescribed. It wasn't, the Agile Manifesto certainly says people over process or people over tooling, but it really doesn't talk about how to evolve an organization, which is a biological computer that is comprised of a whole bunch of human beings who all have to kind of do their part and are going to do it in the fashion that they've become accustomed, or where they get their self-esteem and what things are important to them. So, those things were lacking in the Agile methodologies. Also, the Agile methodologies just reinforce some biases that we have about how products should be built. Another thing that David wanted to do, and I think this came from Motorola more than Sprint, but he he realized that there was non-software development contexts in which he needed to improve: marketing or support or budgeting, right? All of these groups, finance, needed to also improve the way that they managed work. So from the challenges with Agile and realizing that he wanted to have non-software development contexts involved in the method, he also said, well, this is a whole business. I need to create something that can help whole businesses. And at some point in this journey, he discovered lean manufacturing, the stuff that came out of Toyota, Deming and Stewart and Taichi Ono. But he had also discovered Eli Goldratt. And so he was, and the ideas of, humane treatment of employees or members of your organization. Everybody in an organization has a part to play in improving the organization as a whole. That really influenced him and what he created, or what he wanted to create, and what he started to create in the early 90s. So just when we go back to what his problem and what he was trying to do, again, was very influenced by Agile being present in the ecosystem at the time. And the challenges with early Agile was that they were primarily team-centric. I still feel that this is true of Scrum today. It has a very team-oriented bias, which is not system thinking. Normally, organizations are comprised of a number of different teams, and Scrum can actually make them somewhat competitive, or local optimizations inside of an organization. And he wanted to get away from that. He also wanted to get away from just software development entirely being the context in which we do improvements. All product organizations have constraints to doing work or problems with processes somewhere in their workflow. And all of these eventually become a dissatisfier for customers' interactions with that organization. So he wanted to create something that didn't leave all of those other work business units out. And I think he felt that Agile emerged kind of as a rebellion against waterfall. It didn't come from a healthy place. It came from like, we need to fight back against management, and we need to take this back and defend the team. And I think he wanted to sort of try to do something that didn't have that bias or that perspective. So that was sort of the context of where he wanted to build something different. But again, the Agile methods themselves, they didn't generally have a lot of whole organization thinking. So they didn't have system thinking sort of baked into their DNA. They didn't realize that organizations are built of humans, and changing human behavior is a lot harder than just planning a meeting, or asking people to do a particular topic. You need to actually have a method that is taking into account that humans are honestly a little bit weird. And again, the Agile methods at the time reinforce this sort of tribal, the tribal approach that teams interacted with each other, and he wanted to get rid of that. Another thing that I think he didn't like, and this is one of the reasons why eventually I was a Scrum practitioner for a long time, where I started, because I didn't know about Kanban at the time. But measurement practices are kind of fuzzy in traditional Agile contexts. We've got points or t-shirts or velocity, all of which are poorly understood. What is a story point is still being debated nowadays in wherever Tumblr or Twitter or Discord or whatever chat or whatever community you participate in. T-shirt size, same things. Velocity is a gamed metric. And that really bothered Dave. He wanted something way more tangible that wasn't prone to be gamed. And taking things from lean, you can't, it's not ambiguous when a car enters an assembly line and when a car leaves an assembly line. right? The time that it spends at a station, like that kind of measurement precision, or not, maybe not precision, but that kind of certainty about where a measurement begins and what we're measuring really resonated with him. So he wanted something that was different than story points or t-shirts or velocity or anything that kind of like that. But he didn't want to lose everything about Agile. Like, there's a lot of good things that are still in the Kanban method. They're still in our body of knowledge that didn't originate in our body of knowledge, but which we try to amplify. So visualization of work, boards existed before David said that they were we don't call them a thing. A lot of people say this is my Kanban board, but it was just a board in our industry long before that. Better descriptions of work item types, more granular, more flexible descriptions of work item types, and these visualizations of work provide a much richer medium for conveying information. So you're going to see visualization is a very important concept inside of the Kanban method. Collaboration, the stuff that comes out of the Agile manifesto, and even about Scrum and teams being built together and collaborating in a very rich medium. He didn't want to lose that. And one of the things that, this is a word that we use more so than you would have seen, but I think it's appropriate that we call it a more modern word. Agile teams wanted more skill liquidity in the organization. Now, the initial response to that was having a team that had a whole bunch of cross-functional or T-shaped people. With the Kanban method, we actually don't necessarily require all of those teams, all of those people to be co-located into a team, but the idea that we have this flexible workflow where work goes to where it needs to be treated, it gets the proper treatment, it's done in a sustainable fashion, at the same time still maintaining the delivery characteristics that the customers want, was something that we've got a more modern or a more sophisticated take on it, but that was certainly present in the early Agile implementations. But we also saw that Dave was influenced by Lean, and Lean is something that Dave really resonated with him. Lean offered system thinking, right? That was a really big word. Like, if you go back and look at presentations from the earlier Kanban days, we leveraged the word system thinking a lot. We really, Kanban University was originally called Lean Kanban University because we really attached to the Lean mindsets, the Lean body of knowledge. So it offered system thinking. It offered humane and compassionate treatment of employees. The idea that, everybody had an opportunity to improve the organization. Everybody's problems should be heard, was certainly important. Those unambiguous measurement concepts were really resonated with him, and the idea of signaling. Now, we don't signal in the Kanban method the same way that a lean manufacturing parts bin would signal that it's time to call for a new one. But we do use signaling quite extensively once we start to practice the Kanban method in organizations. But manufacturing is a very different domain than knowledge work. It's one thing to build a whole assembly line and watch it work, and to watch the robots or watch the human beings do their work and sort of do those optimizations. But when you can't see your assembly line, when you can't see the workers working because it's actually happening in their head, or they're typing on a screen and that output disappears into a hard drive, it's just a digital thing that you can't see. We have to have different management techniques, and acknowledge that work just flows a different way in this thing. So we had to adapt what Lean presented to our context. And so what we really have come up with is a really strongly Lean inspired non-agile methodology. Originally, Dave had created a methodology that used DBR, dumb buffer rope style work management systems. He used these at Sprint and Motorola. Eventually, he became a product manager at Microsoft, and this is where he realized that DBR probably wasn't going to be the best mechanism to manage work in knowledge work scenarios, and where he started to really create what would become the Kanban method. And because he moved away from DBR more to an appropriate queue-based work management system with these replenishment cadences. And also because of the situation that was at Microsoft, he realized that, I've got a team, but this team has customers. This team has dependencies on users in the broader organization to test things that they actually work. So this system actually required a more meaningful collaboration, a more meaningful work signaling approach, so that Microsoft would eventually benefit, not just a local optimization for the team or local optimizations for particular users in that group. So while we call this a lean inspired non-agile methodology, we actually also say that the Kanban method is an alternate path to agility for whole organizations, which allows us to, I think it is an important differentiation versus something like Scrum or, homegrown Agile. Typically, they aren't able to add that whole part for the whole organization. And I wasn't sure where the slide, whether it belonged in the Kanban method description or here, but I decided to put it here because it's not a part of the Kanban method. But I wanted to make sure that you guys are introduced to the Kanban University's sort of the organization itself, which is where all of our body of knowledge is kept. There's Kanban University, which owns all of our training material, and our training material is probably the best representation of our body of knowledge. It isn't our only representation. And then the Kanban conferences, which are put on by Kanban University, are where our community come together and where we are always collaborating and trying to elaborate and become better at doing what we do. So we created this lean inspired non-agile methodology, and now its home is Kanban University. And the bottom tagline, like every time we do something with Kanban, it's supposed to be pragmatic. Like if we're not solving a problem and we're just, making something fluffy, or we don't have a concrete problem that we're trying to solve, it kind of, it's kind of like an allergic reaction. We want everything to be actionable, and we want everything to be evidence-based. So what follows should help you understand what those particular things are. So does anybody have any quick questions about the origin and the problem that David was trying to solve and how we're solving it? Okay, I see a whole bunch of note head shaking. So I'm going to just get on to a sort of what I call a concise definition of the Kanban method. If you were to read Mike Burrow's book, or David's book doesn't really talk about the Kanban method because it was written before we really kind of called it that. But Mike Burrow's book is actually quite a good treatment. It's actually like a full 300-page book that kind of represents a lot of the things that we do. But the Kanban method in its essence is actually a very simple set of components that we put together to model complex systems. And so the first sort of part of those concepts is sort of, those components is some of our principles and the 6 general practices. So the first one that I want to sort of talk about is the change management principles. This is really our way of making sure that everybody does this in a humane fashion. When you come into an organization as somebody who is going to try to make some changes, we recognize that what you're trying to change is a human being's behavior. You may be changing their job or their place, and this is going to have effect on their productivity. It may have an effect on their self-esteem, and all of these things increase resistance to the changes and decrease the likelihood that the change will actually take effect and actually achieve the results that we want, because we found something wrong. So the first principle is we start with what we do now, right? Deming would have called this tampering. Don't tamper. Go observe the system, try to find a problem, and then decide what you're going to do about it, as opposed to just coming in and shuffling all the deck chairs in the Titanic. So understand the current processes and how they're actually practiced, and then make sure you respect people's roles and their responsibilities and job titles. Having someone say, "Hey, you're not this anymore, you're this." They're gonna be like, "Wait, well, what? This I've got a CV that says that I'm this, and I know how to do this really well, and I've spent a lot of time in school doing this." I don't like it that you've changed who I am or who I present as in the business world. So respecting those roles and responsibilities and job titles is really important to make sure that human beings aren't startled. They don't get scared about the change, and will make it more likely that something is going to happen through to completion. The next thing that is important is that we gain agreement to pursue the improvements through evolutionary change. Now, this is important because there's two facets to this. I always teach it, there's two facets. First is that we all agree. So get some consensus in the room that there is a need to change and that we are going to change. And then the other part is to agree in evolutionary manner, which to us is small changes, not radical ones. So we do small little adjustments, see if they work, and then adapt. If it worked, continue. If it didn't work, we can roll back or roll forward and try again. But we didn't achieve the improvement that we needed, so we have to try again. When organizations bundle up a whole bunch of changes together into a really large change, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And there might be a lot of good things that were in that change and a lot of bad things, and they just nullify themselves out because nobody knew what was actually good and what was bad. So we feel that this is an important principle to have right directly in the method. And the last part of this is encourage active leadership at all levels of the organization. You have a lot of really good and talented people in your organization, and they know what's wrong directly around them. And if we don't give them an opportunity to express that there's a problem, and express what they think might be a solution to that particular problem, we're losing out on improvement opportunities inside of the organization. Jim said, if Jim asked me one time, it was, where would someone conflict? What could someone say about that would conflict with? And one of the things that I couldn't do is I couldn't come in and design a big change for an organization. If someone said Kanban can do this, Dave can do this for you, I'd be like, no, I can't. I can't come in, analyze your organization for a month, design the new version of that organization and install it, because I just don't fundamentally believe that I'm in the right place to do that. I don't have the knowledge. I'm not smart enough for sure to solve a different company's problem, but there's so much knowledge and information present in the organization that if we let it come up and let it participate with a common language and common frame of reference, then we can all improve. So those are the change management principles, and these are baked right into the Kanban method. The other set of principles that are important to us is that we have our service delivery principles. And so we believe that an organization is a network of interdependent services. And there's a whole bunch of policies that are going to determine how these services interact. But one of the things that we really want when we say that someone is a service is we hope that it instills an idea of customer orientation. So all services have a customer who has a need, and the service's responsibility is to satisfy that need and give it back to the customer in a satisfactory manner. So we really want Kanban adoptions to understand and focus on a customer's needs and their expectations, because that's going to be the fitness criteria for whether the service needs to change and in which manner it has to change. The other thing about services, as opposed to teams, is that it lets us focus managing on work and not workers. When we focus on teams too much, we tend to start focusing on the individual on that team and not on the services capability as a more holistic unit to solve a particular problem. So what we like to encourage people is like, here's a work item, figure out how to make that work item flow so that it meets the customer's expectations. And if we model it as handoffs, that would probably be detrimental because we're going to run into, this guy hand off to this guy, but then this guy, other guy's busy, or we don't have that guy's out for the day. So we, let's the team or let the service try to figure out how to satisfy those customers' needs. And once we have a whole bunch of policies and expectations in place, now we actually can create opportunities to review how we are doing. How are those policies working? So we have customers' needs and expectations, and now we probably have delivery capabilities that are giving us information about that. We can review the network and its policies to improve those customer outcomes, to make sure that we're doing the right stuff for their customers at the right time. So those are our service delivery principles, and these are sort of ways of thinking. These are more of a value system, but they manifest in the 6 general practices that the Kanban method encourages all to do. These are not in any particular order. They are somewhat a little bit easier to do in a particular order, but it's very nuanced. So the first one that generally everybody says is visualize. We want to see our knowledge work. We want to see the things that our customers have asked us for in a way that allows us to manage them better. Now, this often comes up as Kanban boards, but this can actually just be even like a list that everybody knows. This is what customers have asked for. When you go to Wendy's and an order has been taken, that order is virtual. We don't have a piece of paper, but it shows up as a list, and you see a list of all the orders that are present for the people in the kitchen to start preparing. That's a visualization of the orders. We also like to visualize workflows. So if we can see a workflow, it's kind of like seeing a building's foundation being poured, and then we see that's the main structure being built onto it, then we start walls. Like, that's the workflow. You can sort of see that happening, but you can't see that necessarily in knowledge work. So we like to visualize workflows, and then we like to also visualize risks. If you could, human beings are very good at processing visual information as opposed to reading words. There's a slide in our training material. A human being processes a visual information 60,000 times faster than they do reading words. So I can show you the state of work for a team, and you can interpret it faster than you could read the 3-page document that was the status report for that particular project. So we like to do a lot of visualization. We also like to limit work in progress. So there's a lot of queue-based theory reasons why work in progress is a dangerous thing if you want predictability or you want to have shorter lead times to get towards your customer satisfaction. But I think the primary reason that we want to limit work in progress, and the reason we use the words limit work in progress, is because of the overburdening that knowledge workers tend to have inflicted on them by work that they can't see. And we needed to provide a humane mechanism to treat our team members, our employees, in a sustainable fashion. So we limit how much work is in progress so that people aren't multitasking, they're not working nights and evenings, they're working at a sustainable pace and probably doing better work. The next practice is managing flow. So we have the word flow in a lot of our materials. We want to see things not get interrupted. We want to see things not getting delayed. In order to do that, we need to see where they do encounter delay and where they do get interrupted. So managing flow is the analysis of our flow metrics and trying to create visualizations of bottlenecks or impediments to flow. And then the next thing, once we see the work and we see where flow is, we start to create policies. And these are like the rules of the game. The reason that we say make policies explicit is that a lot of policies end up being stuck in a manager's head. This is how he prioritizes, and he hasn't written it down, so nobody understands it. This is how he limits work in progress, but nobody can see it. And by seeing it and having it present sort of publicly in the public domain, it allows us to interrogate those policies, to question them, to tweak them. And when it's on a piece of paper and we've all agreed this is the policy and it's on a board, it actually makes it so that I don't have to challenge a human being about their policy. It's just a policy on the board. And this is an effect of making policies more explicit and more shared and more well understood. The next practice is implementing feedback loops. So in order to understand if we're improving, we have to have feedback loops. If your feedback loop is once every 6 months, that's not going to be very effective for making changes in a more rapid fashion, which is probably what we need to do. So the Kanban method has a whole bunch of cadences, that's called our feedback loops, at appropriate places that are going to stimulate observations and improvements to emerge at the right time in the right context. So we have these, sort of daily driving feedback loops. We have these organizational improvement feedback loops, and we start to make sure that they're data driven and that we are doing them as often as possible. And the last sort of general practice is that we want to improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. So this is where we get back into the lean aspects of measuring and watching our workflow and making decisions that are based on data. Data-driven decisions about how and when to improve. This is actually one of the hardest things to do when you're coaching a team doing Kanban, because everybody has a gut feeling about what the problem is, and they have a gut feeling that it's improved. But when you actually watch it, it's like, yeah, we didn't actually fix it nearly as much as we thought, or that wasn't the problem, because what we feel is much different than what the system data will actually present to us. So we like to make sure that people are always hypothesizing, measuring, and using the data to take away the human biases that we have inside of our own heads about where we should or shouldn't improve. So that's the basics. Like, that's the most concise definition of it. To talk about what we use boards and dashboards to visualize workflow and business risks. We create these virtual management systems that are explicit policies, right? And they have decision filters that are designed to support flow and the humane treatment of employees. And then we also, with those things all in place, we make sure that our team members and our employees know that, hey, if you see a problem, it's not just you who sees it. You might be the first person to notice, but the Kanban system should tell us about it. The board should show us that bottleneck, and you should feel free to bring it up or raise our attention, and even potentially present a solution. And again, the reason that we do all of this is because we want to have better business outcomes. We want to have faster and more predictable service delivery. And when I say the word faster, this shouldn't be like we're trying to be breakneck speed, like fast. It should be humanely fast and appropriately fast for the business problem that we're trying to solve. There's a lot of teams that build software that don't need to deploy it daily. Their customers wouldn't want it daily. And then there's situations where you would want something daily. So usually faster just means we would like to do a little bit more with the resources that we have, but we almost always want to be more predictable, because there are people who are making plans around what we're doing. We want to be able to adapt to the changing environment. Our customers change, their needs change, the business environment itself changes. You add 2 people to a team, you should get faster, and you should be able to make sure that the upstream Kanban systems that are providing you work know that you're going to be needing a little bit more work to do, or else you're going to run out of things to do. Or if you lose 2 people from your team, you have to tell your customers, hey, we've lost 2 people. Our capabilities are going to have to be degraded for a little while. So we're adapting, we're communicating more effectively with our customers, which hopefully makes them happier. And we're also having hopefully happier and more engaged employees, because they're part of the solution. They're being empowered, they're given the basics, and all of the information is present so that we can all help the whole organization get better. Just a quick word about customer orientation, because some people in this room probably directly interact with big C customers, people who pay you to do something for them. So they give you money, it goes from their bank account into your bank account, your company's bank account. But those are not the only customer orientation that I want you guys to sort of think about, because even two services within an organization will be customers of each other, or a customer and a service for the other one. So we have this concept of big C customers and little c customers, but all of these customers, we are hoping that they have the ability to express a service level expectation, and they can express their satisfaction with our current capability to deliver on those expectations. So that's where the customer orientation, has a little bit of a nuance to it. And I just want to say something about the Kanban method. The Kanban method to me is an incredibly powerful set of concepts. Like, I haven't run into a problem that I can't solve with just these core concepts. I can make really sophisticated Kanban systems out of all these simple parts. And part of the reason that we can do that is because it doesn't have a lot of very specific guidance about how you should build a Kanban system. It has a whole bunch of pieces. It has a whole bunch of value propositions about how you should do things. And all of these are going to encourage us to model more complicated, more complex problem domains. So while it seems simple, and it is simple, it has some very complex applications. So you do have to be careful when you're starting to adopt it. But I haven't seen a knowledge work problem that I can't model, and I can not start to create an opportunity to improve using the Kanban method, even in its most simplest form. So there's a little bit more to it than just those 6 practices. We do have things called work item types, workflows, work in progress, signals and controls. We have things called classes of service and commitment points and cadences. These are all words that you're going to hear and pieces that you're going to hear about in a training class if you were to come and take one of our classes. If I came to help you, I would probably start to talk about these kinds of things. So these are all the simple pieces, again, without specifying exactly what they have to be. But these concepts are important puzzle pieces to help us build these complicated models or complex models. And the whole body of knowledge is quite a bit deeper, as I alluded to. We have training material, we have conference talks, we have case studies. There's a lot of books that are out there. And then we also have something called the Kanban maturity model. If you have an allergic reaction to the word maturity model, I would encourage you to let that flow over you, but still explore it, because our maturity model isn't about, it's not supposed to be a vanity metric where you're ranking yourself against somebody else. Our maturity model is designed to solve 2 problems in improving organizations. First is overreaching. When you try to do something that your organization isn't quite ready for, isn't quite mature enough to handle in a safe manner, we don't want you to overreach and try something that's really hard and fail. The other thing too is sometimes you do a whole bunch of improvements and you get like, hey, wow, everything's so much better. We can stop now. We call false plateaus. So our maturity model is built on sitting on false plateaus when there's a lot more opportunity to improve within the organization. So a quick example, these are high level, and if you guys attend the conference, the 2 talks that are come after this in February and March, you might see this workflow. These workflows are from an exercise that we do in our static exercises in our class, which Jim is going to present over the next couple sessions. So this is the one that I've been sort of avoiding. Product development. Yes, if you build software, we can help you. And you can call yourself Scrum, I don't care. You can call yourself Kanban, that would make me happier. But we can we can help product development teams work. We can also help content creation teams work. And this visualization here is what we call our knowledge discovery visualization. So what are we doing at the first stage of knowledge discovery? And this team called it fact finding. They were building an e-learning course that just do fact finding. And you can see that the collaboration pattern in fact finding includes all 4 disciplines. But eventually you've done enough fact finding. Maybe not all of it, but you've done enough, 80-20 rule, right? So then we move into the next dominant activity, which is instructional design, which has a different group of people who are working. After we've done that, we get to drafting, which is only one person, but then we get into beta testing and publishing. And this was an e-learning content creation team describing how they would build a Kanban system to help them manage their work. Here's a steel mill equipment firmware upgrade. And you can see that this thing is dominated not by software development practices, but by safety practices, quality assurance practices. When you have really big containers full of molten metal, you don't want to make a mistake, especially when human beings are running around those big containers of molten metal. So you can see that there's some analysis of firmware development. And I imagine that the firmware development is much more complicated than what they have here, but the dominant activities that was important for them to manage was, where is this thing as far as testing in the simulator? Where is this thing as far as testing on the factory floor? And when you're rolling out new software for industrial equipment, making sure the staff knows how to use it is a very important activity. So this was how they managed their workflow and who was going to be involved in those various things. And last, but certainly not least, human resources. I've built Kanban systems that help human resources start to manage their workloads. And one of the things that they do a lot of is hiring people. And this is a slightly different Kanban system when it actually becomes real. But basically, they develop a job post, then they go find and filter a whole bunch of candidates, then they perform interviews, and then finally pick a final selection. Interestingly enough, this final selection goes into another Kanban system, which is actually the onboarding activities, bringing that employee into the organization, making sure they have an office, making sure they have a phone, their email, and their identity. Those are all different tasks done not done by HR, but done by different parts of the organization. So there was a different Kanban system for that one. So those are the different places that Kanban can be used. And then this is where I wanted to touch on the metrics that came from Lean that have been adopted or that we have adopted. So these are all metrics that you're probably familiar with. If you're not, you can ask me some questions about them afterwards. They all can be treated with a very deep treatment, but these are the metrics that are important to us. Not a lot more than this, but they're all sort of based in virtual arrivals and virtual departures, work that is in progress at the time. So those are all sort of the realizations, how they actually manifest when you get a chance to go and practice the Kanban method. So, I'm just going to wrap this up with some final thoughts. I think the Kanban method is a manifestation of a Lean. It is certainly for knowledge work. We couldn't take the manufacturing stuff. If you go out and read about it, you'll hear things about lead time and cycle time or tack time and how does that work. And the Kanban method has tried to simplify this just by saying lead time, and then we have some sort of qualifying words around that lead time. But it is still very much Lean-based measurements. It is broadly applicable, and again, it's not just meant for software development. I think that the Kanban method is actually very easy to adopt because it has these principles, right? Try to build a model of what you do out of these simple pieces, and then think about what the next step is. And if you just built a model and it wasn't quite right, well, we're going to evolve the model, and we're going to learn that the model wasn't quite right. So I find that it's actually, emotionally acceptable to a lot of people. It can be a little bit intimidating when if you dive in and you think about all the things that you have to build, but if you go back to first principles and just try to design, model your thing, and try to create change that is humane, you're probably not going to go wrong, and you're not going to hurt yourself. Again, this simplicity to me is very empowering. And for me as a practitioner, again, I haven't found something that I couldn't model with the components of the Kanban method. So that's it. I'm a little bit longer than I thought, but I still have time for questions and time for slides. So does anybody have any questions, or does anybody want to share an experience that they had with things like this that would support or even challenge what I presented?
We don't have any questions in the chat at this point, so I don't know if somebody that's watching has something they'd like to ask.
Yeah, I would like to just suggest, most of my working career has been involved with manufacturing, but in almost all cases, that manufacturing was preceded by some form of design or engineering work. And it has always been a challenge to get those folks to think about flow and process and how their work can negatively impact the actual production process if it's not thought of as something that needs to be shown and seen as to when will we start and when will we finish. So yeah, I could see this would be tremendously helpful for folks in that part of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a comment because we have been using Kanban in our team, and we've been using it for a few years. But of course, the reinforcement of the principles, we'd never really gotten that perspective of it. So I'm excited to go back and think about those principles and start applying them to what we're already doing. But it's been such a tremendous help to just make sure we're not overburdening each other. So we have we started off an Excel spreadsheet. Now we've moved to Teams and using the planner in Microsoft Teams. And just to be able to visually see, oh gosh, I've got 3 hours of work scheduled for today, but I actually only have so many hours between meetings to actually do the work. Oh, heck, I'm going to need some support. So we move over the card to the support section and be like, hey, can anybody help me out with this task today? So that's how we've been using it, is to kind of manage our day. But I'm excited to kind of explore looking at the cumulative flow of the tasks, just somehow looking at that in a different way. So I'm excited to see Jim's next sessions to figure out how we can do that. So thank you so much, Dave. But the principles are really a key, kind of bringing everything all together between the change and all the different principles. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we in the community sort of struggle with is Kanban. The word is very approachable and it's very common, and people go off and do Kanban, and they still encounter certain problems, and they don't know about our body of knowledge, and they don't know that we've actually been actively trying to solve a lot of these problems. And so I'm really glad that we can talk about it and just show that there's a lot more to Kanban than just boards, and some haphazard adaptations of that some guy came up with a lean metric, which again, I'm not discouraging the exploration of the problem space or people to come and innovate or try to but we have a lot in the Kanban method, a lot of experience. Like, we've been trying to solve these problems of helping organizations learn how to get better, learn to discover where their problems is. That's the thing. Kanban itself is not going to solve any of your problems, except you don't know where your problems are. So it will help you with that, but it doesn't actually solve the problems. And that's where it's all you. And that's what's exciting to me about when I teach, these are not my solutions. I just told you how to go find your problems a little bit better and to sort of quantify them, but now you have to go actually solve them. And so that's what we've been trying to do for a long time.
Yeah, that systems thinking approach that comes forward in this method is being so front and center. It makes a huge difference, I think, at the end of the day. Huge difference. Sometimes we tend to get too team or too pocket focused, as compared to stepping back, maybe climbing up on the ladder and looking at the whole shop floor and seeing it as one big system as compared to independent little systems. This has been great. And that one slide that you pulled up a few back that Jill commented on is definitely a great way to present all of that.
I forget which one that was, Jill.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, it was the one that had,
Just had an overview of your basic concepts. There were 6 items, 3 and 3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The general practices, yeah. So if there's no more questions, I mean, I'm happy to stay around a little bit longer if you just want to chat afterwards, but I know I want you guys to see these resources here. Again, you'll have the PDF, it'll come. So this is where I would start, but also if you just want to reach out to me, if you have questions, I love email. I will get back to you probably pretty quickly. I try to keep it within 24 hours. But yeah, just reach out to me. I'm happy to share, talk. If I end up in your city, I'm really easy to get around a pub and have a beer and talk Kanban stuff. So, anyways, thank you guys very much. And I think we have a book to give away now.
yes, thank you, Dave. We have a few. I need to remember my order of operations here. Do we do the wheel now and then move into the close off, Catherine? I'm a newbie at this.
No, we would usually do the announcements first and
Okay.
then move into
And then
the.
into the wheel. Alrighty, here we go then. I will just share out my screen. It's telling me I can't share because somebody else is sharing. Oh, here it goes. Just had to catch up a little bit. There we go. And can everybody see my screen? So just a reminder, we would love feedback. It helps us as a group get better. And I know that our presenters love to get feedback as well too, positive or negative, hopefully more on the positive side, but I will also post this in the chat in a second once we get through these announcements. And then
If I can just interject
sure.
for a second too. I don't know if your feedback form has like a sort of an open forum part, but if you guys want me to come back and talk about something that you saw here in more depth, I'd be happy to do that. You know, so if you have something that you would like to see more of, or like to hear me talk about again, I'd be totally happy to come back and do a deeper dive on metrics or sociology of change or something like that.
Excellent. Thank you for that kind offer. So next, we've got our upcoming sessions. It feels weird being the host and doing a shameless plug, but the next 2 in a row, as Dave mentioned, I'll be heading up. They are introduction to static. Static is systems thinking approach to implementing Kanban. That's what the acronym stands for. I love static because to me it's we're so familiar with the value stream maps and business process mapping inside of Lean. Static kind of takes it to the next level where we're looking at the entire system. So instead of looking at a specific business process or a specific value stream, we're looking at the organization and how the work gets delivered, how the services get delivered. And that can be at a team level, or you can even step it right up to the whole organizational level, which obviously becomes a little more complicated, but I found it a great approach to us here at GSCS for analyzing our workflows and sources of dissatisfaction and coming up with solutions and trying to just keep that continuous improvement model going. So that'll be a 2-part thing. Static is a fairly deep topic, so it's going to be very introductory, but it should give you enough information at least to understand the process and then begin to explore it further. The next 3, I'm going to shroud myself as the international man of mystery here. We're going to be we've got some really exciting announcements about these next 3 coming up soon. Just finalizing the detail. They'll be up on our events page fairly shortly. So please keep popping back to the website, check out the events page, and you should see them up there shortly. I know in the background what's coming, and I'm really excited and looking forward to those 3 sessions. So hopefully you will be as well. Now the door prize. This is where we do the wheel, is it? I believe.
It is, and I have the
I will.
I have the wheel all ready to go. So
All
I will
right.
just share my screen here. This is the first time I've been the wheel guy, so I hope I do this right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, here we go. Oh no.
No sound.
I promise you, I swear that was not rigged. Okay. You didn't have any sound with that, Catherine, you said?
No, you have to share the sound when you share the screen.
Oh, okay. My bad.
No worries.
Well, congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can drop your own address in the chat for yourself.
Okay,
And
I will do that. Do I give it back to Jim or is that it?
Yes, please. I got one more slide, I think, here to
Okay,
pull up. And there we go. And we want to keep the discussion going. So we do have discussion forums on the website. We encourage you to hop in and create posts, see what's in there, contribute to conversations. You can follow the discussion groups and follow individual discussions and everything else. It's quite interactive and a growing source of information as we continue to have conversations on this part of the website. And that's under the member content tab on the website. Or sorry, there's the member content and then there's the discussion tab. That's a separate tab. My bad. So I believe that pretty much wraps it up for this evening. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. And thank you, Dave. That was so insightful. And even though I've been running with Kanban for a while, I find every time I speak with you, a new nugget pops out of the pops out. And I'm very appreciative of that. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. Thanks, Stuart. Me and Stuart have been trying to get this talk going for quite a while, so thank you for your patience, Stuart.
thank you very much, Dave, and we'll see you all later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye, guys.